Coming up on today's show, meet Peter, a resilient spirit who navigates through the chaos of his past to embrace the clarity and strength found in sobriety.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast. I'm Julie, your co-host, on this journey of healing and transformation. Together with my co-host, Peter, we dive into the heart of recovery, sharing stories that resonate with courage and inspiration.
That's right, Julie. Each episode is a new chapter in this vast narrative of recovery, and we're honored to bring them to you. But keep in mind, the perspectives you'll hear are for informational purposes only and may not reflect the views of the podcast or our partners.
Indeed, while these conversations can be a powerful part of your recovery toolkit, they are not substitute for professional medical advice. We encourage you to seek guidance from your healthcare provider for any treatment-related decisions.
And if you're facing an immediate crisis, or if you just need to talk to someone who understands, don't hesitate to call the Recovery Crisis Line at 503-223-8569. That number is also on our website. Help is available 24/7.
Now let's begin our episode
of Recovery, Real Recovery.
Hi, this is Julie from Real Recovery Podcast, and I'm here with my co-host Peter today, who's going to share his story. And not only will you get to hear it, but it's going to be the first time that I've heard Peter's whole story in the less than 10-minute version that we usually get at our meetings. I'll be here listening with you, and I'm going to ask some questions as we get towards the end if there's anything that I'm dying to know.
Hopefully not too many questions. Hi, everybody. I'm Peter, co-host of the Real Recovery Podcast. And yeah, normally it's 10 minutes and you've got to whip through or get the highlights. So we'll see where I go with this today. I'm a little nervous because, again, putting yourself out there and being fully honest with my story, there's some dark sides. There's some ugly parts, if you will. But I think we're all human, and so we all have those secrets, and maybe they shouldn't be secrets. Maybe they should be transparent. I don't know. That was part of my soul searching and putting this all together. I am going to be as transparent and open as I can be. And my journey, I think, really began when I was young, like probably around 10 years old or so, that I really got the concept anyways. I was different, that I wasn't like everybody else. As I grew up, what I realized was that I am gay. Back then, I didn't know the term gay. I always was drawn to boys and had more boyfriends than I had girlfriends. And as I got into high school, that's where you like a girl. I liked boys. It didn't seem any different to me other than I was shy and I was a geek. And so I got teased a lot. And one of the teasings was faggot. I was called a faggot. And this is in high school time frame. And of course, in high school, at least where I went, there was a lot of cliques. And if you didn't belong in the jock clique or the science clique or the cute people clique or whatever the other ones were, you were an outsider and you were teased. And the clique that I ended up, it wasn't really a clique, but it became one, was what we called the gravel lot kids. And the gravel lot kids would go in the back gravel lot behind the school, and that's where you smoked, you got high, sometimes you drank. And that's where I fit in with all of those oddballs back there. And when we had parties and school functions, the only way I operated in those was we would go, actually for the functions, there was a corner across the street from the school, and we would go over there and behind this little doctor's office and drink. And that's what we did. And then it made me feel like I was part of the group, and I felt my confidence level went through the roof, and I was the life of the party. At least I thought I was. And so high schools were the drinking. It was a means for me to escape who I was, because I wasn't what I was brought up. I was brought up in a way that, like the church, it was gay people are perverts, they're criminals, they deserve to go to hell. It was just, you weren't accepted or to be accepted, and that you were to change yourself to conform to the straight viewpoint. And when I was I'm being stumbly here.
It's okay. Don't worry. It's not an easy thing.
So when I was in high school, I was teased a lot because I was shy and I was a geek. And I didn't know fully what I was. I knew that I was attracted to boys, and I was teased for being gay, but I didn't want to be gay. I wanted to be just like everybody else. And my upbringing in the church and in the youth groups was that gays are an atrocity. They are perverted and not acceptable. And so I tried everything I could to change myself. And when I couldn't figure out how to change myself, the feelings wouldn't go away. Like, I tried dating girls and asking them out and tried to go down that path, but I couldn't do it. It wasn't me. And so then I thought, I can't live in this world. I'm not welcome. So there was a point where I was 16, I guess. I had my first car, and there was this curve on the island where I lived where there was this really long straight road, and then there was a sharp curve with a cliff. And a student a year or so back had actually driven off that and committed suicide. And I thought, that seems like the right way to go. And I went tearing down that road and came right up to that curve. And at the last minute, I swerved my wheel and avoided killing myself. And so, but that's just to show you, how much I was trying to be, either leave it or conform. And I even went to a hypnotherapist one time to see if I could be hypnotized straight. And the guy ended up giving me all of these comments and suggestions that were very uncomfortable and sexual in nature. And I realized that he was hitting on me. And I thought that, okay, so I left there. No way, that's not going to work. And what got to work, what helped me, what worked for me at the time was whenever I was in an uncomfortable situation, I would drink. It would help me forget who I was, forget these feelings, and I could function and be a part of whatever group it was, or a party, or going out. This went on through when I went into college and go out with friends to clubs and stuff. It was like, and at the time, all of my friends were drinking and stuff. It was that college days. I partied with all of them. I just partied a lot longer after them, kept partying. And eventually when I had a few troubles with where I got pulled over once in Seattle, and I was going to get a DUI, and another car went tearing past where I was stopped and straddled a median. And the cop was like, "Oh, must be your lucky day." And they went over and took care of them. And all that happened was I got my car impounded, and that was it. I had another time where I was pulled over for swerving, and whatever reason, that cop let me walk the rest of the way home as long as I left my car there so I could get it back in the morning. I had these things happening that weren't normal for normal people. And so there were signs that this drinking was a problem. But when I figured out who I was, and it was about 22, when I fully came out to myself and to everyone with my sexuality, that I'm a gay man, and and I had been roommates with my brother, and there was a couple upstairs, and they were talking. There were two guys that lived together, and they said, "Oh, you've got to come over to the Brass Rail. It's a wonderful place to hang out." And so that's what I did. I showed up there one time, said, "I'm going to accept this. I'm going to see what happens." I went in, and it was like, oh my God, it's the same feeling I had coming to the club that I go to now for my meetings. I was like, these are my people. I've made it home. This is me. Then there's more people like me. And it was that same acceptance, like I'm a part of, this is who I am. Of course, in that gay lifestyle, because we weren't welcome anywhere, the clubs were the place where you met. The clubs were a place where you hung out. Was part of your lifestyle. And of course, in clubs, what do? You drink. And at one point, I could walk into that club and the whole club, it was like me being, was it Norm in Cheers, where I'd walk in and everybody would, because I was the life of the party. And I ended up moving to Capitol Hill. I lived downtown. So everybody pre-functioned and post-functioned at my place, which was great for me because more booze, the better. And on all that time, my memories are a bit foggy, but I know there was many times where I could barely stumble out of a bar or stumble up my steps to get home or whatever, but I never got 86 from a bar. Even one time I tore a drag queen's hair off and gave her an once up and once down in a drunken rage. And yeah, the booze was a problem. It was part of my life. I still made it to work every day. Anyway, eventually I did a geographical and I ended up in Portland, and I had moved in with a guy and we actually ended up being together 8 years. And I transferred my job to Portland and I ended up making my life in Portland. And again, there was a few things that happened over the time. There was a guy who I was friends with. We used to bowl together, and he was tearing, and I was encouraging him to run red lights as we were driving through the city. I know. After drinking all night at the bar, and he got pulled over. But who got put in? And it was the first time. I know what it is now. I didn't know back then, but I got put into Hooper Center, and I think it's called Hooper Center.
It's called Hooper.
Or Hooper. Yeah, I ended up there. I didn't know what that was, and spent the night there before my partner came and got me. And so
I've chaired meetings at Hooper for months. Yes, never been there, but chaired meetings.
I returned there when I was at ECAC in the program, just on the outside. I wasn't in, and it was another guy there that was giving meetings and stuff. So I learned what it was then. I was like, wait a minute, I think I've been here before. At this point, I would fast forward on my 10-minute story, but everything was pretty good because I'd set up a lot of rules for myself, which is, I think, another sign of an alcoholic or someone who's addicted, because I would do things like, okay, as long as I don't drink before 5, don't drink in the morning, unless you're camping.
Controlled drinking. Exactly. You tried controlled drinking.
Never, only on Fridays through Sundays or something like that. I had all of these stipulations. Only wine, no hard alcohol, only beer. It was always something, but I had all these rules set up. And for whatever reason, I really stuck to them, and I never had trouble at work. I was in my head, it was like, if it ever affects my work, then it's a problem. But otherwise, now, this relationship that I was in, it had some troubles with it, but it ended in part to my increased drinking in that relationship. And I didn't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous or recovery or anything like that. It was just like, okay, so I drink too much. Okay, maybe whatever. And what I did was I thought, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to do a different career, and I'm just going to, and I was able to do that. And I don't recall really if I exactly changed my drinking habits per se, but maybe I did drink less, but it was always there. And I was I was a party drinker, but then I think at that point I evolved into a binge drinker because it was more like I could hold off to make it through all of these. If I had to do stuff for work or this or some event or school, when I went back to school, I couldn't drink during school. So I was able to do that. But then I would have these wild weekends where there'd be this big blank spot, and I'd wake up on Sunday morning. What the hell happened over Friday and Saturday? I had no clue. And because it would be blacked out, which is known as a blackout drinker, binge blackout drinker. But I continued on in my job. I did a lot of outside town events, and I think it was almost like fate because I managed the conference center where I worked at, and I did a lot of store openings, and I was the guy who managed the audio equipment and they did karaoke and things like that. And I had to be sober. I couldn't drink during all of that. So I would a lot of times be there so late that there was a lot of executives who drank heavily. And I'd be the guy and my partner who was with me, luckily he was a big guy, would have to basically carry them to their rooms, go find room keys for them from the front desk. I was the kind of the cleanup guy. And so there was no time for me to drink. So that saved me. It's almost like a blessing in disguise. And for whatever reason, I managed to continue on. I think there was geographical that helped too, because after 18 years with my former company, I got a chance to go to Chicago and manage a TV studio. That's part of what my technical background is. For a Office Max, which was a company back then. Now it's been merged over, and I don't know who they're all together with now, but the studio doesn't even exist anymore. But we made the move out to Chicago. It was a great opportunity. I also ended up getting my current husband. We got together during that time. And I managed my drinking. I don't think I hid it, or I didn't. It wasn't until the end days in Chicago that kind of set in. But and I had the opportunities to go. I had so many opportunities to drink. Like the company would throw parties and they would try to woo new clients and things. And I'd go and they'd have the booze flowing everywhere, because that's what corporate America did. And I managed to stay free of it for most of it. There was a few times where I had to drive by Braille, basically, with the bumps in the road to get home. But then probably about the fourth year of my time in Chicago, and not long after that, then I ended up going to work for a company on the East Coast. And I was traveling, and I was alone in a hotel room for long periods of time. And what else do you do? I got more and more into drinking to pass the time, I guess. I roll there. And so I worked for that company, Office Max, and ended up, one of the executives there ended up going to another company on the East Coast and brought me along to make that happen. They were going to put a studio in. And at that point, being away, flying back and forth every week and being in a hotel room while I was out there for the weeks at a time, my drinking just grew and grew because I was unhappy. I was lonely. Isolation. I really was becoming isolated. And I was asked to be a part of an event where I have a way of grilling steaks, and I'm a big barbecue guy. And so they wanted me to do this for a promotion for one of their events. It was a barbecue, a steak off or something like that, you call it. But three of us were going to compete with our cooking these steaks. And it was all about this type prime cut or whatever it was. I can't quite remember, but I was all nervous about that. And I was over the weekend, and I probably got a couple bottles. I don't remember exactly, but I just started. And I was staying in a residence, corporate housing. And I just drank myself into a stupor, and I was gone for 3 days. I missed the event. The company was wondering where I was. My boss sent people out to see if I was still alive. It was really bad. And ended up, I was done. I was at my end. And so I called him and said, I binge drank, and this is what's happened. I've been drinking the whole time and passed out the whole time. And I was so out of it. I was so hungover beyond what a normal hangover. People, oh, you're hungover. No, this was like major shakes, inside, outside, can't eat, can't think. And I just grabbed everything I had in that place, threw it in my car. I'd driven my car out there months back, and I just drove from New Jersey all the way back to Chicago overnight, pitch dark, windy roads. And I did it, and I got home. And so I lost that job. I show up at home and with Justin, and I remember lying in bed. I think I sobered up, and I thought, I got to do something. And I decided I was going to do my own business, and I started working on that. But I remember I still was sneaking down to the pantry. For me, at that point, it was, in Chicago, it was so easy. There was a pantry in every building, and they all sold liquor. And I would go to one pantry, and then I would drink that whole bottle, and I would know it was too soon to go back. They would think something's up. So I would go to another building, to their pantry. Sometimes I would walk 6 blocks to whatever store, just because no one's going to know if they don't see me. And how I kept all that straight, I have no idea. And I ended up one morning coming to, and it was a weekend, I think, and Justin was there, and I said, I can't go on. I've got to get back to the West Coast. I've got to get back to home. And I just can't continue. I can't continue. And he couldn't continue either. You'll hear his story at some point because he would like to share as well from his perspective. And so we put the condo up for sale, packed a box truck with everything we could fit in it, and drove back to Portland. And we moved in with my in-laws, his folks. And originally they have a floating home, and we originally stayed in that floating home, but I kept going out and getting drunk. And I got so drunk one time that and they have an upstairs where the bed is. And Justin's mom had to get two guys to grab me and help her get me to the car because I couldn't walk. I was totally out of it. And took me home and said, okay, no more staying at the boathouse. That's not going to work. And I made it along, looking for work and so on and so forth. But I wasn't done yet, still wasn't done yet after all that. And so the big end of the straw, and there's other little things throughout the way that I'm not going over that I think will come out as we speak to other guests and stuff. And I'll be reminded of, because this is a lot to go through in one setting. But there was one night, and what I had done is I went out and got a bottle of vodka and I hid it, I thought, very cleverly. And I'm downstairs in the basement and I'm drinking off this bottle and putting it back where I hid it and feeling pretty good and pretty sly. And Justin and his mom come downstairs and they're like, okay, where is it? We know you have it. Where is it? And I'm just like, I don't have anything. What are you talking about? I haven't been drinking. What are you, and I'm sure I was slurring. And Justin looks at me and he goes, Mom, check the wood stove. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you doing? Why are you going? Apparently I had ash all over my face from my fingers touched because I had hid this bottle in the wood stove and the ash had gone. I had these big black marks on my face. Oh my gosh. And that really pissed me off. I think I got in the car and drove it. I don't remember exactly how everything unfolded, but later that night, I went back and Justin and his mom were talking in the bedroom and I was furious and I started yelling at Justin and I was just in a drunken rage. I really don't know exactly all that was said other than his mom had a safety taser that she had in her purse and she was trying to tase me to make me back off. And then I went to bed because, okay, fine, you're going to tase me to bed. They ended up calling the cops, and that's when I ended up being taken away, spent the night in jail, and they came and picked me up the next day, Justin and his mom, and Justin didn't press charges, but when I got back to their place, there was my bag packed. And he was in tears and he said, I felt like I was packing up for someone who died. And that broke me. And he said, you can't live here. We can't continue on. This is it. And that was what I call the crossroads of my life because it was more of a T. I'd come down that path through my life, with all these ups and downs and craziness. And I hit that T in the road. And it was like, okay, I can go to the left and continue down this path. My mind was already working on, okay, I guess I could stay with my folks. And I don't know what I'm going to do for work, but I'll figure it out when I get there. And all of this was going through my head. Or I could have gone to the right. And what his family, they weren't new to alcoholics. His aunt is a recovering alcoholic. And she got her recovery through the East County Alano Club. And so they said, you can go there. If you go there and you turn yourself around, you keep going, we'll see. Basically, they weren't saying I could stay or anything. They said, we'll see. And I thought, I'm going to do it. That's what I'm going to do.
Nothing to lose at that time.
Nothing to lose. And so that's when I walked down. I think he went with me for the first time. And because he'd been there, Justin had been there and his mom to support her sister. And so they sat with me and went through a meeting. And then it was that I went on my own. And the first time I went on my own, I remember I just was petrified of the whole thing. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not like these people. I can't relate. They're just a bunch of old people off the street, whatever. I just had this whole mixed up concept. And I sat in the very, very back, and there was these 4 gals that were sitting in front of me. And one of them turns around and said, "What do you think you're going to hide back there? What are you doing back there?" And I said, "I'm just here for the meeting. This is my second meeting." This gal's like yelling at me, and "You better get ready to speak because you're going to be sharing at this meeting." And sure enough, I got called on. And that gal is Donna, who has been with me in this program since
Donna.
then.
Yes.
Yeah. And she is a godsend, but she's a little eccentric. And just a lot of people in the program, they're like, "No bullshit. This is how it is." They live the bullshit. And so she wasn't going to let me get away with anything. And so that's how I got to be, I shared a lot. And then I ended up chairing. Then I ended up becoming the secretary for the Came to Believe meeting, was what the meeting was called. And then I ended up helping the district build the website for Gresham. Somebody else manages it now, but I started it. And then I was a part of the District 11 board. And from there,
So let me ask you a question. Saying that you did these service positions, how do you think they kept you connected to the program? You talk about you doing that. I told you I secretaried the same meeting for almost 4 years. Do you think that really, I know that's not necessarily your home group of choice, but it sounds to me like they saved your life.
Yes. Yeah,
absolutely. How important was it to you to be of service to them?
In the beginning, it wasn't. It was like, "You're going to make me do this?" But that's part of just me being shy and uncomfortable with myself. And so for sure, having me go, I was there 3 times a day. I hit every single meeting. I did, because once I heard, it started with the stories. And once I heard some of these people's stories, I began to see that they aren't so different from me. Mm-hmm. And I could relate to a lot of it. And then what happened with that is I got confidence and I got hope. And then as I got asked to secretary, I felt like I had purpose. It started before secretary. I had to dump the ashtray cans. Who wants to do that? But I was helping the club. I got to make coffee. And when you're so far down and you don't have any hope really, and you're just doing something because I didn't want to lose my husband, and that was really that was my motive. I didn't want to lose a place to live and my husband who had an income. I think that was my bare motive in the beginning. But as you hear the stories and you're with the people daily, and then you start to feel like you've got a purpose by doing these small things, which are actually huge because they give you purpose, and then secretarying, and you're more a part of the community, you're more known. And one thing about being so seen is that when you start to think about, I think I want a drink, or you get that urge, you have more people that are looking at you.
That you're accountable to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think that also was, I did have to go out and come back several times. Nobody wants to, at least I was petrified about coming back, and I didn't realize how welcoming a group could be.
You had to do more research?
I did. I had to go out and do more research. But I came back to the club. I knew that was where I needed to be. And then I stuck with them. And I think I had maybe 5 or 6 years stretch. But what happened is, as I got sober and I healed. I healed. My sickness was healing. And then I was able to start looking for work, and I got a job. And then the job led to getting a house and moving back out on her own and, becoming independent. And because that takes up time in your life, I pulled away from the club. I didn't go to as many meetings. I didn't see my friends in the club. I had normies that I worked with, and through, I don't know how long it was, but there were times when it was like, oh, we're all going down to such and such for a drink after work. And I think I made it through a couple of those get-togethers with just soda, but eventually I was getting a beer to fit in. And that's all it takes, or for me, all it took before then I was buying a bottle and hiding it somewhere in the house and doing all this, which I had gotten really good at in Chicago because we lived in a condo. And let me tell you, I could find a spot to hide a bottle in that condo, and you wouldn't believe the spots that I found. And so I started just doing the same thing because I got away from the program. And the difference between me and what we call normies, people who can have a half a glass of wine and set it and leave it, I can't. And there's no off switch. There's not enough. I didn't realize it so much then, but I really realize it now. There is not enough alcohol. Vodka is my drink of choice in this world. There's not enough for Peter. And of course, that answer to that is death. So that is something that keeps me sober today. But I went after I started, I forget what broke the camel's back, so to speak, but I don't remember exactly what came to me or what drove me. But at some point, I just knew I had to get back to the club. Oh, I remember I went out to the Dominican to do a Doctors Without Borders kind of thing. And I was like, I'm in the Dominican. No one's going to know. So I had, drinks with every meal and whatever. I just let loose and didn't think about, people are taking pictures and those might go on Facebook. And then people at my club might see me on Facebook with that. I think then I got called out basically. And so I went back to the club and I raised my hand because that's what you do when you're under 30 days. And I was so petrified because I was like, I'm going to come back there and they're all thinking, oh, here's Peter. He's been so good. And I raised my hand and they just welcomed me. They welcomed me. They gave me hugs. They talked so positively about me. And so I got back in the program. I think it was prior to 2017 that I ended up back right away into the club. And that's when I met Don. And then after 2 years with Don at ECAC, because then we started doing breakfast and he really took me under his wing. That's then I got introduced to the lunch bunch and I've never looked back since. And
Yay.
That pretty much, and that's 7 years. That will be 7 years ago, July 19th.
I love it.
That I really got sober, and I don't see any way. There's always, it's so bad. That's the baffling and cunning of this disease. It's always in my head. Little voice back there. So I have
we
to
just have today. There's no difference between you and I or somebody with 30 days, one day. It's just really one day at a time. I have a problem staying in today sometimes. I think like you, I have anxiety that's different anxiety, though I think it's been the same at times in your life, your experience with your job. But I do think that if you can stay in today and not worry about tomorrow, just staying clean today. I love your part about you had to go to 3 meetings a day. No, it's different for everyone. I literally had to go to a meeting every day. And it was easy for me at first, believe it or not. The struggles I've had and what I've gone through in AA are immense. You've dealt with death of a parent.
Yeah.
I've dealt with death of my daughter's father from overdose, when that I was her only relative pretty much. My mother had just died 6 months before her dad. So I understand there's things we go through, but staying connected to the meeting during hard times has always worked for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm struggling in any way, I go to more meetings. It really works.
What's nice about finding a meeting that you're so comfortable with is it's not just at the meeting, they become a part of your life outside of the meetings. And we have our fellowship, where we go out to lunch together and stuff, but there's times when we'll get together for bingo in the park. maybe couple of us will get together, go to a movie together.
One of my personal favorites, Friends in the Park. I'm all about the bingo. And I told you, and this is true for me, my father died at 15. Truly, I never celebrated a really good Father's Day until I was at your house this last year.
Oh.
Ever. I know your parents probably thought I was a little crazy, but as an only child, not having a father there who celebrates Father's Day, and then Cassandra's dad dying, like Father's Day wasn't a good thing for us until I met Don, and Don being like the dad I never had. Celebrating Father's Day truly at your house is the first time in my whole entire life at 57 that I remember celebrating a good Father's Day. And it was awesome. Eating 3 pieces of pie with your husband was like heaven in another way. And it's crazy to hear you say about the boathouse and his mother, because I know both of your in-laws. And even thinking that when I see you now with your husband in your house and I've seen you successful, what a vision. It just shows you that really how the program can work. And your bottom is a high bottom, which is such a blessing. I'm a little jealous of the cop letting you go. Okay. I'm being honest, where I used to be very resentful about doing some time. And now I know that for me, it was the timeout that I needed. And I didn't realize that until going through IOP. Until they said, take your very worst situation and turn it. And that was probably my very worst situation. And literally, it probably saved my life.
Yeah.
Because I never wanted to lose my freedom again. You didn't want to lose your husband.
Yeah. There's a saying that I almost chant, and there's a reason for everything, and everything has a reason. And that was the only explanation that I could grasp onto for why I went through what I went through, looking at my whole life. And I never knew what that reason might be, but perhaps it's this. The reason that I went through all that is that maybe I'm here because there were so many times when I think, God, how did I live through that? And I touched on a few situations that I went through in Seattle, but there were many others where I was just out there. Nobody knew where I was. I was with a stranger, woke up at a strange house. Anything could have happened to me. I would get into people's cars, promise me dinner, and okay, let's go. They're cute enough.
And just think you did all those things for free. You know?
Yeah.
I was very resentful. Getting arrested with $250,000 and having it taken for you can lead some resentment. So I understand. I appreciate hearing your whole story. I want you to know that hopefully someone listens to it and they're in despair and they know they can do it too.
Yeah.
And I think, like he said, finding a place where you felt you belonged. This lady, I tell you this all the time, when I went to treatment the last time, she said, find a meeting and never leave it. You're going to have to be there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And it's true. You don't, at least the people that I know that are successful, they don't graduate from being an alcoholic. Okay. Yeah. They don't graduate from recovery. It's something you have to keep pursuing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't go to meetings every day today, per se, but I have the people in my life on a daily basis. And that works for me. I feel good. I feel in a good place. Some people may be different. Some people may need to always, like my aunt, she wouldn't shop down the liquor aisle in a grocery store. I can walk down there and not even think about, oh, there's beer over there. She couldn't do it. She went to meetings at least once a day and sometimes twice a day. She was every time I would go, it was almost annoying because I was new and she would just spout off about, oh, well, and this and that. And everything was AA, but that's her. That's how she, yeah. And that's how I forget, it's 40 some years that she's been sober. So everybody has a different path.
It is. And I think there's different paths in different stages in your life.
Yep.
Like at first you needed 3 meetings a day.
Yeah.
At first, like I told you, I went to a meeting every day for 4 years, 3 months, and 22 days. And then as I went up the corporate ladder, I went on Fridays and I picked up my sponsor. Then there was a time when my sponsor was literally 90 years old that I brought a meeting to him on Saturdays. So there's different phases. And then for me now, I think with my job stress sometimes, I need to go to a lot of meetings. And I think the online meeting for me personally, I probably wouldn't go and drive there at nights. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, and it's easier for me to go there. And also Zoom hosting has kept me in that commitment of going to a meeting and then us going every Friday. That to me is, I can take a deep breath on Sunday and go to work and exhale sometimes on Friday. And truly the only year since I've been sober, the hardest year was when I didn't go to meetings all the time.
Yeah.
For me, I can't do that. And it wasn't about wanting to use. It was about being stagnant and not growing and overthinking the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting away from it is, it allows, I have a lot of people in the program, people out of the program to talk about this inner dialogue. And I have this inner dialogue, that these voices.
Committee.
Yeah, the committee. And so if I don't keep that committee in check, which meetings help do that, having people in my life who are sober do that. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be here today without that.
Yeah.
It's very important.
I agree. Peter, I just want to thank you for sharing your story with me. I know it's not easy, especially us being vulnerable to people we haven't seen or don't know.
Or met yet.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for me to trust in a group and I can see them, and we're trusting on a bigger level with such personal stuff. So I just wanted to tell you I appreciate it. I appreciate this adventure.
Oh,
and,
me too.
I really hope that it touches it out there for them, someone who's struggling, and they know that there's hope. And that there is a way. There absolutely is a way.
Yeah. It's like what we said in our first episode. That's what I want to get out of this. I feel like I want to give back. And the example that I'm setting by telling my full story on here is hopefully going to inspire other guests to be comfortable sharing their story. And as we share more of these stories worldwide, perhaps, I have lofty goals, but
so do I. I actually agree with you on so many levels. And I seen you get emotional today. That's something they can't see listening. And that's being vulnerable. And it's not easy. I know. I cry all the time. I'm a crier. And
you can get ready for that when we have you next and your story.
And Peter's story and mine are very different. I think that the differences will even show how much we're connected.
Oh, I like that. I like
very
that a lot.
much.
All right. Thanks for listening, and be sure to visit our website at realrecoverypodcast.com and leave any comments or suggestions. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Great. Goodbye.
We'll be back soon. Thanks for listening. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks to each and every one of you for lending us your ears and hearts. Your engagement is what fuels our passion and keeps this podcast thriving.
We cherish the moments we share here and hope they resonate with you. Whether you're on a daily commute, at the gym, or just taking a moment for yourself.
Make sure to head over to our website at realrecoverypodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter for the latest insights and uplifting stories from our community delivered straight to your inbox.
Click that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player too, so you can keep up with every new episode. It's your support that keeps our conversation alive and meaningful.
And if our stories have touched you, consider using the donate button on our website. Your contributions, no matter the size, are deeply appreciated. They help us continue our mission of sharing hope and healing.
Join us beyond the podcast and follow our journey on social media. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. All the links are on our site, so you can stay connected and be a part of the Real Recovery community every day.
Your likes, shares, and comments not only spread the message of recovery, but also remind us that we're all in this together.
So, until we meet again, remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination, and we'll be here to accompany you every step of the way to recovery, real recovery.
Thanks for listening.